Hello there. Didn't see you come in. Let's make some cinnamon rolls.
This here's a pumpkin cinnamon roll recipe from Chef John at foodwishes.com. These are better than standard cinnamon rolls because the pumpkin gives a nice touch of variation to the horrible tedium of life. To start, we'll combine our yeast, sugar, and water to give the yeast a head start.
Vroom vroom, you little critters.
While that's doing its thing, we'll put together all the remaining ingredients except for the flour in a bowl. That is, the pumpkin, heavy cream, salt, melted butter, vanilla, ginger, allspice, egg, and granulated sugar. Cool. Now put in the yeast mixture from before. The next step is to add flour. We'll start with 3 cups, and after that's incorporated, we'll add more little by little until we get what is best described as a slightly sticky ball. Ideally, in bread recipes, you don't want to measure your flour by volume, but rather by weight, since the amount of flour in a cup can be drastically different depending on how compacted the flour is.
An optional step. Flour tends to be a bit clumpy in its container. Nothing's worse than biting into freshly baked bread only to have little bits of flour in the middle of it.
Some recipes say to sift the flour, but an easier method is to measure the flour in a separate bowl and whisk until the texture is moderately fine. Once all the dough ingredients are combined, it's time to knead.
Why?
The gas released from the yeast causes the bread to do its signature rise. However, regular dough isn't strong enough to contain all of the gas. Kneading takes advantage of the gluten found in wheat flours, which when stretched and bothered, extend the gluten strands and strengthen the dough's structure. The holes you see in bread are the result of the gas being trapped inside this structure. The more one kneads, the tougher the dough becomes and the smaller the holes are. What we're looking for is a smooth texture that is still a tad bit sticky, almost like Play-Doh.
There's a reason it's called that.
Afterwards, put a small amount of oil in a bowl, which we will then roll the dough around in, and then let rest, covered for 90 minutes. What we're looking for is for the dough to double in size, and the time this process takes can be affected by the temperature of your kitchen, as well as the temperature of your dough.
This is another reason why using warm water rather than cold or room temperature is preferred.
The oil, by the way, is to keep the dough slightly hydrated while it sits. Ideally, you can also cover it with oiled plastic wrap for the same effect.
While the dough rises, we'll make the cinnamon part of the cinnamon rolls.
This will simply consist of brown sugar, white sugar, and cinnamon mixed together until it becomes a homogeneous mixture. Cool. Once the dough has done its thing and doubled in size, we'll take it over to a floured surface and start the shape. First, deflate the dough. Yes, all that waiting for it to double is crushed in an instant, but don't worry, it has its purpose. Using just your hands, we'll be shaping the dough into a thinnish rectangular shape, maybe a foot in length. Then, using a rolling pin, or maybe just your hands again, we'll be creating a rectangle about a foot by a foot and a half. We're looking for something on the thin side, as the thinner the dough is at this stage, the more layers in your cinnamon rolls. Once shaped, we'll be brushing the surface with melted butter, making sure to leave a 1-inch strip on one of the longer sides unbuttered. This will be used later. Once buttered up, coat with the cinnamon sugar mixture from before, trying your best to get an even coating.
Don't worry if they're not perfect. They're cinnamon rolls. You have to try really hard for them not to taste good.
Remember that unbuttered strip from before? Take some water and use your finger to wet this part. Now for the roll part of cinnamon rolls. Take the longer side opposite the water side and begin to roll up the dough into a log shape. You want a fairly tight roll, but don't stress about a certain number of rolls you should do by the end. The important thing is that when you get to the end, the water edge should act as a glue to seal the entire thing together.
Okay, well we've made a cinnamon log, not cinnamon rolls.
To leap that semantic chasm, take a knife, or a pastry knife if you have one, and cut the log into 16 little rolls. You'll next need an oven-safe baking dish that has been well greased. This can be butter, shortening, oil, anything that will prevent your poor little rolls from sticking to the bottom. Which of course leads us to the next step of placing the 16 rolls into the dish, placed in such a way that they are not touching each other. You might be used to seeing cinnamon rolls all squished together, fresh from the oven, and yes, that's what will happen. But we need them to rise once more in a process called proofing in order for them to get that close. Overpacked cinnamon rolls will compete for space, and this will affect their cooking.
Proof for 45 to 60 minutes, or again, until doubled in size. Now finally, at long last, it's baking time. Oven, 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Rack, center. Time, 30 minutes.
Hot, fresh from the oven bread is a weird collective fantasy that we all have that isn't actually a thing. Cut into bread too quickly and you ruin the texture inside and also burn your mouth, you animal. Let these cool in their pan for 15 minutes, but rather than watch them hungrily for that time, there's one last step.
You may have noticed that these rolls have no creamy glaze to them. Let's make one.
Combine powdered sugar and room temperature cream cheese and milk in a bowl and whisk until smooth. If you don't want flour chunks in your dough, you'll hate sugar chunks in your glaze. Drizzle over the glaze onto your hot, fresh buns. And now,
It is time. And that's how you make pumpkin cinnamon rolls. Hope you learned something. Bye.